It's Tuesday, March 14th, 2017. I'm your host, Sarah Mantle. We have a great show in store for you today. Up first, we're going to talk with Police Chief Paul McDonald. He will join us over the phone. Then we're going to chat about seasonal liquor licenses in the town of Barnstable with Director of Regulatory Services, Richard Scally. And finally, we'll catch up with DPW Director Dan Santos on this episode of Barnstable Today. But first, let's go ahead and get a look at today's top headlines. We do have some school closings and other closings to report this morning. Barnstable Public Schools are closed today. Cape Cod Community College is closed today. County offices are closed today, and there will be no flights out of Barnstable Municipal Airport today. All Massachusetts courts are also closed today. Hyannis West Elementary School has been named Massachusetts School Breakfast Challenge Champions. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education selected Hyannis West for increasing and sustaining student participation in the school's breakfast program. A grant from the EOS Foundation will again fund the elementary's breakfast program this year. Congratulations, Hyannis West. Well-deserved recognition. Nominations are being accepted for the Mercy Otis Warren Cape Cod Woman of the Year Award. The award is presented each year to a woman who has made significant contributions to the arts, business, education, and community through volunteerism. Nomination forms are available at libraries across the Cape, town halls, and online by visiting talesofcapecod.org. Nominations are due by April 17th. The Barnstable Youth Commission is gearing up for its third annual Community Substance Abuse Prevention Forum and 7th Grade Youth Summit. This year's featured speaker is Chris Herron. He is a basketball legend from Fall River who lost his career with the Boston Celtics due to substance abuse. The Community Substance Abuse Prevention Forum will be held Thursday, March 16th at 5:30 p.m. at the Cape Cod Community College in the Tilden Arts Center. The event is open to the public. It is free of charge. No need for tickets. Just go ahead and show up at the event 5:30 at Cape Cod Community College this Thursday. Up next, we're going to chat with the Chief of Police, Paul McDonald. But while we take just a moment to get him on the phone, we're going to give you a special treat. We have a sneak peek at the Barnstable High School Drama Club's production of Into the Woods, which opens this week.
But careful not to lose the way. Into the woods, who knows what may be lurking on the journey. Into the woods to get the thing that makes it worth the journey. Into the woods to see the king, to sell the cow, to make the potion, to see, to sell, to get, to bring, to make, to live, to go to the festival. Into the woods, into the woods, into the woods and out of the woods, and home before dark.
Joining me now live over the phone, Police Chief Paul McDonald. Welcome back. We're glad to have you here today.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. It's great to be back.
We have a lot to talk about today.
Yes.
First of all, we have an upcoming storm. I want to talk a little bit about that. From what I have been watching, we should not be getting hit quite as bad as the rest of Massachusetts.
Yeah, we just got a conference call. They're kind of downgrading it a little bit for Cape Cod and the islands. Right now they're talking 2 to 4 inches snow starting this morning. And then eventually it's going to be changing over to rain. But if you look outside right now, the average temperature is about 34, 35 degrees, so it might be mostly rain. But we are still concerned because if we do get the snowfall and if there's a lot of water with the snow, with the heavy winds tonight, we there's a possibility of losing our power and some down wires. That's our biggest concern right now.
Right, so we're definitely going to keep an eye on that. Everyone should make sure to take some precautions, I suppose. Get those cell phones, computers charged up, ready to go. Maybe head to the grocery store?
I think everybody was there yesterday. I went to the grocery store yesterday myself. It seemed like everybody in town Barnstable was there. So I think they're all set at the grocery store.
Sounds good. So everyone got it out of the way. That's good to hear. We do have some other serious items to talk about. I want to talk about a gun trafficking case.
Right.
It's a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. This involves a 50-year-old woman.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about this story.
It's a little unusual. It's not uncommon for us to arrest somebody who is trafficking in narcotics. It is somewhat uncommon for us to arrest two individuals who was trafficking firearms. The investigation started back in January when the Quincy Police Department had a shooting in their town. They did arrest an individual. They did recover a firearm, and then when they traced the firearm, it came back to an individual, a 51-year-old female living in Centerville. They notified us. We then conducted our own investigation, how this firearm ended up in Quincy. We did talk to her, got little or no cooperation from her. She had no good reason, no good excuse why she didn't have control of the firearm. So I suspended her license and eventually revoked her license to carry. The detectives then went over there to serve her suspension notice, and while they were there, we knew she had 10 other firearms licensed to her. So once your license is suspended or revoked, you have to turn in your firearms to the police department until another licensed holder comes and picks them up, and they're legally transferred to the other owner. She could not account for any of her firearms. We then continued the investigation, and it turns out that she had called a friend of hers to hold the weapons for her. We were able to contact him, that he wanted no part of it. We eventually did recover the firearms in possession of a known felon, Mark Griswold. He was also charged. So Joanne Baker, 51 years old from Centerville, and Mark Griswold of Hyannis, they were both charged with lawful possession of firearm and trafficking in 3 or more firearms in less than 10. She was held on $500 cash bail. Mr. Griswold was held on $7,500 cash bail because he has a lengthy record.
Now, if convicted, what kind of charges would this woman face for basically, it sounds like, providing criminals with guns?
Exactly. And there's still 2 weapons out there that are unaccounted for, and we're having difficulty. We have not found them yet. We're working with the ATF. The ATF is now involved in trying to track those other weapons down. It appears on face value there's a possibility that she was providing these firearms to known criminals. So that's going to be a huge problem, and she could face up to 10 years in prison.
Wow, pretty hefty.
Absolutely.
Punishment there.
Yes.
Thank you for telling us a little bit more about that. We also had kind of a different incident over the weekend. A dog attack happened. The victim was actually medical flighted.
Right. That was a tragic event. I mean, the dog was known to the victim. The victim was actually dog sitting. The dog belonged to her son. The dog was there for a couple of days. The dog had no tendencies to do something like this. The lady just took the dog out for a walk, was playing with the dog and her other dog in the yard, and for whatever reason, the dog seemed to turn on her, bit her in the leg and bit her in the arm. She screamed for help. A neighbor called. We responded. And I think the sound of the siren from the cruisers actually made the dog let go. And at one point, the police officer was even considering shooting the dog, but the dog did calm down. Her husband did show up and took possession of the dog. The police officer was there because of the amount of blood, and she was bleeding. He immediately applied a tourniquet to her leg. Barnstable Fire Department arrived, and they had mid-flight to Providence, Rhode Island because of the extent of her injuries.
Wow. Do we know
serious.
very serious. Do we know anything about her condition?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't because of new laws now. That's difficult to get.
Interesting.
Yes.
So changes to some laws. Well,
right.
Thank you for update. Do you have any advice? I know you are not the animal control officer by any stretch, but do you have any tips for individuals if they experience a dog attack like this one?
Well, if you're out there and you see certain breeds are certainly prone to this. You don't go near them, you don't try to touch them. If you run, they probably will start attacking you. If you hold still, if you have a cell phone, call 911 immediately, and don't do anything that would seem somewhat aggressive to the dog, because the dog will attack.
Interesting. I think that would be your natural impulse would be to fight the dog off.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
well,
probably not the best thing to do.
Once he starts biting you, you have to defend yourself.
Right. Thank you so much, Chief McDonald. We really appreciate you. Welcome back. We really appreciate you calling us this morning. Thank you so much.
Good talking to you.
You as well.
Okay,
thanks
bye-bye.
so much. My guest today, Chief of Police Paul McDonald. Now we're actually going to learn about what the town is doing with the potential for seasonal liquor licenses. Joining me now, Director of Regulatory Services, Richard Scally. Richard, so much to talk about today. I want to talk a little bit about the licensing authority. I know they've been working, and they have a couple requests for seasonal liquor licenses. This is something that recently the ABCC reached out to Barnstable and said, you actually can have a few more seasonal liquor licenses, but the board hasn't really addressed this yet. So tell me a little bit about this conundrum we find ourselves in.
Oh, yes. Good morning, Sarah. Yes, well, the issue has to do with people who have requested or sought out an opinion about seasonal package licenses. We have not had that category in Barnstable for many, many years. Just again, to give you a little bit of history, in 1982, a legislative act was passed where we eliminated our seasonal package licenses and combined them into our what we call our annual package license numbers. So those numbers then allowed 11 beer and wine and 11 all-alcohol package licenses for a total of 22. Those licenses, part of them back in those days, were seasonal licenses. Some of them were converted to annual licenses. In the interim, these licenses that go by population, and the numbers show that we are 4 licenses over at this point with the 22 licenses that are out there already.
Interesting. So we're sort of over the limit right now as far as population goes.
We are. However, if you look at the special act back from 82, there is a line in there that does state that the town could consider issuing seasonal licenses if you can show that the population change is certified by the town clerk to be above the number that you would normally have on an off-season basis. So the commission, the license authority, could choose to look at that, whether there's a need for additional licenses depending on the increased population during the tourism or summer season.
Now, is there a time of year that they have to think about looking at this? Is there a regulation, or can this be looked at even this year? Is this something that has to fall at a certain time of the year?
Well, the board has the authority. This is having been verified through the ABCC, through their executive director there. The board has the authority to decide whether they think there's a need or they should have a hearing on the policy itself. And the board at this point has decided, because of a number of things, that there is really currently not a need to do that. However, they still could put that on the agenda for discussion anytime during the year at all. And the chairman did mention that in the next year they could choose to put it back on the agenda and look at the need for additional licenses.
Interesting. So 2 businesses actually made a request for a seasonal license at this point. What happens to those requests? Are they put on hold?
Yeah, they actually placed on file because, of course, the policy doesn't allow for issuance of those licenses at this point. So they're placed on file and will be held. The board could choose to bring them up in the future should they change the policy, or simply file them at this point and could consider them later on should they change the policy.
Interesting. So really up to the board, the licensing authority as they see fit. And Ken, you said they could bring it up anytime. Do you think that have you talked to the chair at all? Do you think that that's something they want to put on the agenda?
The feeling at this point is that due to the issue that we're already over on the licenses that we have currently, and that there is no need at this point to be able to increase the licenses. That could change. I'm sure that people could convince them in some way to do that and put it back on the agenda, but at this point I don't see that happening currently.
Great. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us today. Tell us all about seasonal liquor licenses and if we'll see an increase in those over the next few years. Very interesting discussion. We really appreciate it.
Not a problem.
All right. Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Our guest today, Director of Regulatory Services, Richard Scally. Well, we're still working to get Dan Zantos on the phone. We're going to go over our cancellations for today again. A reminder, Barnstable Public Schools are closed today. Cape Cod Community College is closed today. County offices are closed today. And there will be no flights out of Barnstable Municipal Airport due to the inclement weather today. Also, all Massachusetts courts are closed today. As a side note, many of the regular board committee and commission meetings scheduled for today have also been canceled. The only remaining meeting that at this time is still scheduled to meet is the Charter Review Committee. They're meeting at 6 o'clock in the Selectmen's Conference Room. That is the only meeting that has yet to be canceled for today. But as always, we would recommend before attending that meeting to definitely check and make sure it has not yet been canceled, because at this time it has yet to be canceled. We're going to give you one more treat, sneak peek at the Into the Woods, Barnstable High School drama production of Into the Woods.
The way is clear, the light is good. I have no fear, nor no one should. The woods are just trees, the trees are just wood. No need to be afraid there, there's something in the glade there. Into the woods without delay, but careful not to lose the way. Into the woods, who knows what may be lurking on the journey. Into the woods to get the thing that makes it worth the journey. Into the woods to see the king, to sell the cow, to make the potion, to see, to sell, to get, to bring, to meet, to live, to go to the festival. Into the woods, into the woods, into the woods and out of the woods. And home before dark.
Joining me now over the phone, DPW Director Dan Santos. Dan, heard a lot of talk heading into today about the storm, what we were going to see. We've seen many different forecasts sort of evolve over the last few days. First, we were hearing maybe a foot of snow. Now things are a little bit toned down as far as the forecast goes. What are you hearing?
Well, yes, I think that's absolutely true. We've been following this for about a week, and in fact, a week ago they were talking about 20 inches. And I don't think they were off. I think just the location, and really up until yesterday, depending on where this thing tracked, if it they were kind of basing it on Nantucket. So if it was east of Nantucket, we'd get whacked, and west of it was going to be more westerly, and it ended up moving to the west. So that rain snow line came right over the Cape, and now it's even off Cape, I think. But I think we'll get some snow for a couple of hours. It's around 32 degrees now, but pretty assuredly it's going to move to rain, and hopefully it'll be messy and windy. But by the end of the day, the crews will go home, a normal work day, and that's the best we can hope for right now.
Yeah, I'll cross my fingers for you guys that's what ends up playing out. Heading into work today, looking around, it looked like you had already pre-treated the roads. Is that something that you normally do for a storm?
Yep, I was just going to say that we were out at 5 pre-treating because, like I said, it's going to get some snow, and that pre-treating really does a great job keeping the snow from accumulating on the roads, particularly during the morning drive time, which is important that we have good safe roads for that period.
Now, we are talking about this potential for the snow later in the day to switch over to rain. We did talk a little bit about the temperature. Should we have concerns about some freezing water on the roadways?
Well, the temperatures are heading upwards, so I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Well, that's good news.
But if they do, overnight they may get down below freezing. If there's a lot of water, we could get some black ice situation, and the police are good about letting us know about that, so we'll get out and we'll either spot treat as necessary, or we'll treat all the mains if it's bad enough. So we're ready for whatever comes.
That's right. Whatever heads your way, you're ready for it. Well, it seems like since this is going to be less of a snow event than we thought it would, anything else happening in the Department of Public Works as we head into spring?
Well, yeah. We've got lots of projects going. We just awarded the project to rebuild the bulkhead at the Prince Cove Marina, and that'll get done pretty quickly here because we want to make sure that's ready for when they open for the season. So that's rebuilding the wall, basically, that's between the water and the parking lot. That's the bulkhead. That's a big job. We are finishing up design on the Barnstable Dog Park, and we hope to have that out to bid this spring.
That's exciting.
The demolition of the Osterville Bay School, we're going to be putting that out to bid here in the next couple of weeks. Although you probably won't see the building come down until the fall. We've got some hazardous materials in the building that'll come out first.
That was my next question. You nailed it.
Yep, and Joshua's Pond beach area there, we are going to be redoing the parking and the drainage there this spring. The Bay Street boat ramp in Osterville, we've just put a new ramp in, and right now they're working on the drainage in the parking lot, so that'll be ready for the season. So lots of things going on.
Wow. Well, thank you for giving us this update. We really appreciate it, and I'm going to cross my fingers and hope for you guys that this is a really simple storm.
Yeah.
Very easy day for you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks
Take
so much.
care. Bye-bye.
Talk to you later. Bye. My guest today, DPW Director Dan Santos. Now we're going to learn about herring runs in the town of Barnstable with Natural Resource Officer Amy Croteau. And joining me now over the phone is Amy Croteau. She's a Natural Resource Officer for the town of Barnstable. Amy, it's about time to start thinking about herring runs.
Almost, yes.
Tell me what you guys do. You guys do a lot of work, actually, to make sure those herring runs stay up to date and are adequate. What do you all need to think about during this time of year?
So we do have about 7 or so miles of active herring run in the town of Barnstable, and part of our job as natural resource officers is also to act as herring wardens, and we have to make sure that in the springtime our streams are clear so these anadromous fish species can go upstream into our freshwater ponds to spawn. We also have to make sure that in the fall there is clear passage for the young or fry to move from the ponds back out into the ocean. It is time-consuming. We have a lot of runs in this town that are sort of in need of some rehabilitation, so it can be a little bit tricky. And we also have other species like the American eel and sea-run brook trout to think about when we are managing our herring runs. So there are a lot of thoughts that go into it when we're maintaining them.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, too, I think you use a lot of volunteers as well when you start counting. How does that work? And I think you train volunteers to do this.
Yes. So a couple of years ago, some people may remember that I had started a count program for the Centerville River Run. Well, currently, because of the extreme drought of last year, there is absolutely no water in the Centerville River Herring Run. So we will not have a count program there this year. But it has been determined that a secondary count program at Middle Pond, which is part of the Marston's Mills River Herring Run, would be beneficial. And so Three Bays Preservation runs the herring count at Mill Pond in Marston's Mills. And I will be starting a count program at Middle Pond, which is in the Mystic Lakes neighborhood, also in Marston's Mills.
Wow.
We have a training that's coming up on March 18th from 1 to 3 p.m. and will be held at the Liberty Hall in Marston's Mills on Main Street.
Wonderful. And does anyone need to sign up for that, or can they just show up?
Anybody can sign up or just show up, but because we're serving refreshments and some food, it would be nice if you kind of gave either Judy Heller from Three Bays Preservation or myself via email a heads up if you were planning on coming.
Now, what kind of commitment do volunteers need to make for this program? How much time are they donating? And what kind of hours? Are we looking at morning hours or afternoon hours?
So the counts run from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and they're broken into 4 3-hour blocks. And what you're looking for ideally is 1 10-minute count per hour in each of those hour-long blocks throughout the day. So if a volunteer wanted to participate in a more lengthy way than just doing a 10-minute count, then they would show up at the last 10 minutes of the hour, and they could do 10 minutes at the last bit of the hour and then the first 10 minutes of the second part of the hour. If somebody were to only want to count river herring one time in the count season, that would be fine. If they wanted to show up and pick an hour slot in which they could pick any 10 minutes within that hour, every single day for the duration of the run, they could do that as well.
Awesome, wonderful. Well, here's my question. Why is it so important to have an accurate count on the herring?
So river herring are currently a species that are in decline. They're a species of special concern. They're managed sort of dually because there are two species, bluebacks and alewives. There's been a moratorium on the harvest of river herring since 2005, and in order for any towns to open any herring runs to harvest in the future, they would need to create a sustainable fishery management plan that's approved not only by Division of Marine Fisheries but also by the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission prior to allowing any harvest within those runs. In order to do that, having counts established gives you an idea of what your resting, population is, and so you can make thresholds for harvest based on that. That would be safe and sustainable. So without those counts, you really cannot entertain the opportunity of opening any of the herring runs.
Amy, I have heard so many people since I moved here over 6 years ago, how they go and watch the herring run. I have never done this. Where is the best place for me to go witness this and see it for myself?
So in the town of Barnstable specifically,
yes.
Two of the best places to actually watch the herring while they're running are at Mill Pond, right on the corner of Route 149 and Route 28, or over at what we call the Flume, which is where the second count program will actually be held. A lot of our herring runs vastly run through private property and aren't accessible by the general public. These two areas are places that are, in fact, accessible by the public and where you can view lots of fish running at once.
And how do we know when to hit it so we can see it?
So currently the water temperature as of yesterday was cresting 39 degrees Fahrenheit, and alewives, who will show up first, will actually start their spawning run at about 48 degrees. So when the water in, say, like Prince Cove reaches about 48, you'll start to see massive numbers of fish showing up to spawn.
Wow. Awesome. Can't wait to check it out for myself. Thank you, Amy, for telling us everything we need to know about herring runs and here in the town of Barnstable. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You as well. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Our guest today, Amy Croteau. She is a natural resource officer in the town of Barnstable. Now let's find out what's happening around town in today's community calendar. A new exhibit at the Centerville Historical Museum highlights more than 70 postcards dating from 1880 to the 1950s. You can view the entire collection through December 15th. The museum is open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Admission is just $7 for adults, $6 for seniors and students, and free for children under 8. You can learn about shipwrecks on Cape Cod at the Barnstable Senior Center next week. Don Wilding will speak about infamous wrecks like the Castagna, the Francis, and the Montclair. Wilding will also talk about significant rescues in the early years of the Coast Guard. The lecture will be held at the Senior Center Wednesday, March 22nd at 1:30. The lecture is free to attend. Call the Senior Center to sign up. Well, most board, committee, and commission meetings have been canceled today. At this time, the only committee still scheduled to meet is the Charter Review Committee. They will be meeting at 6 in the Selectmen's Conference Room, although we will say before you head out to that meeting, probably want to check the calendar again and check for any cancellations. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be back tomorrow with another great show. Tomorrow we'll chat with Finance Director Mark Milne. We'll talk with David Augustino, the Executive Director of the Cape and Islands Workforce Investment Board, and so much more. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Mantle.